Level up your LA Kings experience with Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access and rewards. Enjoy great seats to the game in Section 103 along with Yamava Club access and parking included with your purchase. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings shop item at the game. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn perks on each purchase from the only leading ticket company with a rewards program. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings. Did you know the LA Kings have their own culinary partner? It's Superfood, celebrating 10 years and over 1 million meals served. Since 2020, the Kings have trusted Superfood to fuel their players. Now through Simply Lunch, you can bring that same performance-driven food to your office. Because when people eat better, they work better. Visit mysuperfood.com. That's mysuperfd.com. Or call 213-973-6145. Qualified companies can enjoy a free lunch for up to 10 managers.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. This is a brand new episode of All the Kings Men. Joining me today, Zach Dooley. How are you doing today, Zach?
Jesse, I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good. I learned, well, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard an interesting... What do you call a fact if you don't know it's true or not? I heard an interesting thing.
A tidbit?
Yeah, that August 24th is the most frequently taken off day from work on the calendar.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I was going to ask you if you took August 24th off from work.
No, I was there for the full day.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Apparently it's because of the weather. Weather's really nice everywhere. I personally prefer the cold and live near the coast for multiple reasons, not the least of which is that it is always 20 degrees colder here than it is in the rest of LA.
Yeah.
And it's getting uncomfortably hot for me personally.
That's a little surprising too, because it's like right before Labor Day when everybody gets a free day off too.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the more you know. August 24th. I'm gonna book that down as a day off next year.
Like I said, I have no idea if it's true or not. I just saw it on TikTok, and
if it's on TikTok, it's probably true.
Well, yeah, exactly. TikTok has never steered me wrong before. We're here today. We're probably going to repeat some of the conversations that we have today in a few weeks, but we're going to sort of start cycling back up into talking about the LA Kings hockey decisions because the season is training camp is right around the corner. The season is too, but training camp will come first and rookie camp, etc. We've been talking to the coaching staff, you and I. And so we just kind of want to get everybody reacclimated and aware of the roster. So it's not impossible that another move will happen between now and the start of training camp. I've seen a couple moves. I think Pittsburgh and Anaheim completed a trade recently. There are like some minor borderline trades and signings that are still happening here and there, but nothing. I feel like everything's pretty well set in stone, although there are some large stories looming out there.
I always, this day where you start to flip from like summer mode to looking ahead of the season mode, it happens every year. It's never the same day. Like for me, it was yesterday. We're recording on Tuesday. It was Monday for me. And that was more because like I had 4 weekends in a row of like something going on, like a weekend trip or like something to do. And then it was like, okay, now I'm back and I don't have any more weekend like excursions really. And it's like, all right, now I'm looking ahead. And it was like yesterday being Monday, dropped the first training camp preview. It's a few weeks out and it's even fewer from rookie camp. And it's like, once you get to around this time, sometimes it's a week earlier, sometimes it's a week or two later, no later than Labor Day, you really start to think like, all right, we're almost kind of back at it. And like, I feel like, all right, a little bit jazzed up that like, we're almost back at it.
The sign to me, and again, it's not on the calendar. It's like the leaves changing in the Northeast, right? Like there's not a date on the calendar, but when you start to notice things, to me, it was being at Toyota Sports Performance Center last week and seeing a rink full of NHL players.
Yeah.
In an organized skate together. And you're just like, okay, the wheels are spinning, the machine is waking up. And it's time to start thinking about this. Now, like I said, there are a couple of looming stories that could change a lot. You know, Cutter Gauthier still doesn't have a contract. The Dylan Larkin situation is still out there. So, I mean, like, there's still potential for big name players to move teams. But at this point, I wouldn't expect much to change for the Kings. So with that in mind, we're just going to start talking about the Kings roster a month out, more or less, from the start of any major decisions. And we're going to start in net because you had a preview yesterday on the Insider talking about the goaltending position. It's been a topic of discussion. We've already talked plenty about it. We're going to talk more about it in the future, I'm sure. And whenever somebody asks me questions, Zach, I hate doing it, but I have to shrug and be like, I don't know. I don't even have a clue or like, I have my opinions, which we'll get into. But nobody knows nothing about nothing on this one other than who's under contract.
Yeah. It's crazy because, and I wrote this in the story, like last year, the goaltending position was cut and dried. It was like, we knew exactly what everyone's role was. We knew where they were going to play. And we knew like everyone, it was 1, 2, 3, 4 in a very clear order. And then last season happened. And now we have this, which is a lot of questions, I think. And you'd probably agree. There's not an answer to them right now. But you look at, Darcy Kemper is obviously the biggest name. And this time 12 months ago, he was coming off maybe the best season of his career. And now he's coming off a finish to last year where he ranked statistically among the worst goaltenders in the league. And, there was an obvious turning point in his season, that play in Dallas. Numbers before, numbers after are drastically different, I think. And, you have Anton Forsberg, who came in to specifically back up Darcy Kemper. And then he's maybe the biggest reason why the Kings have a good run in April and make the playoffs. And then on it goes from there. And man, there's a lot of questions and a lot of storylines. And I think goaltender goes from maybe the least interesting position in training camp to one of the most interesting positions in training camp.
Yeah. And I have an opinion about who I think will get the first crack. And I feel like we sort of have this conversation every year, but I want to make the distinction that like what we're talking about is day one of camp.
Yeah.
Day two is day two is dependent on what happens day one of camp. And there's really, in my mind, no point in trying to guess what day 2, day 3, day final day of camp, first day of the season, because whatever season that was that Alex Laferriere's first season was, he was not on my radar at the start of camp.
Yeah.
And I would not have expected him to make the roster, stick around, and then have a career, right? Like, not that I didn't think he was capable of having a career. He just wasn't someone I was thinking about. And then camp happens and stuff happens. So all of these conversations are about day one of camp. My opinion, and I feel very strongly about this, is that on day one of camp, Darcy Kemper has to be treated and viewed as the number one goalie in the organization for a number of reasons. Primarily because professional sports, and I don't mean this in a political sense, I mean this in a behavioral sense. Professional sports is a very conservative environment, and Darcy Kemper has the track record, he has the reputation, he has the resume, the experience, and frankly, the contract. You have to give him a shot to prove that he's healthy.
That's completely fair. I think it goes into the season with more of a split approach between Kemper, Forsberg. But I do agree with you that like, it's not fair to just simply say Darcy Kemper was really struggled from January through April last year. He's cooked. You have to give him a chance to show that he's not, right? Like you have to, he's here, he's under contract. 12 months ago, he was third in the Vezina voting. And from October through December until that play, he had a .917 save percentage. I think he was almost 11 goals saved above average. He was the goalie he was the year before, by the numbers at least. So yeah, I think that in the early season schedule is really weird because there's so much time in between games, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not like you don't have to use everybody early because there's so many days off. So yeah, I agree that like I think if you said gun to your head, who is the starter going into day one of camp, I think that you have to probably lean Kemper. But I think that you have to probably look at Kemper and Forsberg with a close to even workload split during camp and preseason, because you have to have both options ready. Like even if Darcy Kemper rebounds, he's not a 65 game goaltender at this point in his career. So you have to have both guys ready.
The other angle that and there's no way of knowing this, but Jim Hiller and DJ Smith both were very public about their relying on Mike Buckley to make decisions when it comes to goaltending. Now, we don't know if Peter Laviolette will have the same exact approach to, consulting and trusting the goalie coach that those two men did. But at least for the last 2 seasons, it's been pretty clear that Mike Buckley had a pretty significant influence on who would get time in net. Now, the other part is Peter Laviolette has coached Darcy Kemper before. So like I said, the professional sports trends conservative. Guys know who they know. They trust people that they have experience with. So for all those reasons, I just think Darcy Kemper gets the number, but that's totally immaterial because, as you mentioned, there's a short training camp and we'll figure it out.
I also think too that it was clear last year that everyone involved wanted Darcy Kemper
100%
to be the starter, right?
Yes.
Like his rope was extremely long. There were multiple points where they could have scaled him back. They kept trying to get him going. And I understand why they did it, even though I think it cost the Kings some points along the way. It was clear that was the end goal everyone wanted, was him to be back, him to be the starter, him to lead the team out for game 1 of the playoffs.
The most solid coaching thing that DJ Smith probably did was going to Forsberg when he did down the stretch and pulling the trigger on that, what had to have been a difficult decision, and just saying, like, we got to go with Forsberg because that win stretch at the end of the season that helped them clinch a playoff spot. Forsberg was in net for, I think, most of those games, if not all of them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, he was the goaltender of the month in April, right, in the NHL.
Right,
I think he got hot when he got hot, and he was a big reason why the Kings,
then they played him in the playoffs. I mean, he was the guy.
And he was solid, right? Like he was one of the few guys who was up for the challenge.
I just personally don't think 5 weeks of strong play at the end of a season is enough to erase career momentum like that. But the real question then is the next 3 goaltenders on the depth chart, because Kemper and Forsberg are in the final years of their contract, but so is Eric Portillo. And Darcy Kemper is at a point in his career where he can do whatever he wants. He can treat the rest of his career however he wants, right? Like he has a ring, he has money, he's had his career. If he wants to keep playing, bless him. If he doesn't, that's fine. Like he can do whatever he wants. Forsberg is a solid backup. Eric Portillo is basically at the start of his NHL career, if there's going to be one. And how this season plays out will likely have a lot to do with whether or not he has, or what kind of NHL career he has. And stashing him in the minors while contractually allowed seems not ideal from his standpoint, and I don't know from the franchise's standpoint.
I think that when the Kings signed Portillo to his current contract, the hope was that by this point we wouldn't be having this conversation, right?
Well, that's always the hope. Sure.
Like everyone thought we would know. Okay, is he an NHL backup or is he not? And I think that Portillo's missed substantial time due to injury. He was injured when the Kings when he could have had his shot last year. He was hurt.
Yeah.
Right. When Kemper went down, it was Copley who came up because Portillo was hurt. And, the year before, Portillo missed 3 months at the end of the year with an injury. And he's been good, I think, in the AHL, right? I mean, I don't watch every game. You watch more than I do, but the numbers look pretty solid. He, was solid in the playoffs. He's been solid there. But in a situation like the Kings, who don't have like a dominant number one, it's hard to say like, yeah, I have the utmost confidence that Portillo would go a whole year in the NHL because he's only played 1 game.
Yeah.
And his AHL numbers weren't what Cal Peterson's were or what Jack Campbell's were or what Peter Budaj's were. Those guys had different levels of success. I like Portillo. He won his only start, and that's great. But it's still a question that I think everyone hoped we would have the answer to by this point. And a lot of that is maybe outside of everyone's control.
And I'm going to lean back on the notion that professional sports is a conservative enterprise. The Kings want to make the playoffs this season. And I mean, I would argue they don't need to, but like air quotes, they need to.
You don't build this type of team to miss, right? Like,
and the rhetoric
or
and
take the approach
just
you
the
did.
whole thing, right? Like Ken Holland has been very clear about his opinions about rebuilds. So they're trying to make the playoffs. And
For sure.
if something happens to one of the other two goalies, do you trust Eric Portillo to take on a much larger role? No disrespect to Eric Portillo. Like some people do, some people don't. But if the reason that Eric Portillo plays, let's just say 45 games in the NHL, which is a lot, if the reason that happens is because you quote unquote have to find out, I don't think that's the justification that will satisfy the coaching staff and management. If he's playing a lot of games this season, it's because he's on a roll and is winning games, because I believe everybody involved in this organization really, 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 really wants to win. And there's no like, well, let's find out what this guy has. Not this year.
I think if you're finding out what he has, it's 5 games, not 45, right? Like
Yes,
if it's okay. Because there's a world, we've read the same reports where the Kings open with 3 in the NHL.
Well, the schedule is so bonkers to start the season. I could see, sliding him in, every third game or something, just to get a sense of, there's a couple back-to-backs early. I wouldn't be stunned.
It's a weird schedule where there's like a million days off, but also a lot of situations like that. Like the Kings have a New York, Chicago back-to-back in October, which is crazy. Like it's one of the wildest ones I've ever seen. But it's the Kings are not at a place where they can just give him 30 games to be like, all right, kid, let's see what you can do. Like they can't get to that point. So it's one, like you said, because he takes on the net and does really well. That's awesome, right? If that happens. Or it's necessity driven. If he played that many games, it's because maybe the other 2 guys got injured. But I will say, Darcy Kemper's been here 2 years in his second stint. He has been injured within the first 5 games of both seasons. The Kings have needed to rely on other goaltenders early in seasons. And if that's an insurance policy to keep 3 to start the year, give everyone a little bit of a workload, see what you have in all 3 guys right now. Like, I don't mind that either, because Darcy Kemper has been injured early in both years and injured multiple times in both years. And he's 36. I think that you have to have that third guy, and at least you have a guy in Portillo who is ready to show whether he can or can't be that third guy.
And the weird sort of complicating this further is that Portillo really becomes he's a fifth wheel, because we know in a perfect world, Forsberg and Kemper are your NHL goalies. And I don't mean a perfect world. I mean, in a simplistic world, in a more simplistic version of this conversation, Kemper and Forsberg are your NHL goalies. And then I'm blanking on their names. George and Slukinski are your AHL goalies. But because Portillo doesn't have an NHL resume yet outside of that one game, and because Slukinski and George are young with tons of runway in front of them, keeping Portillo in Ontario just then complicates what you're doing in Ontario. Keeping him in LA, if enough decisions are made about the forward core that it makes sense for the Kings to carry 3 goalies, I mean, I think there's a world where that actually might make the most sense from a roster Jenga standpoint, just because, like, all right, they're going to carry 7 defensemen. That seems clear. Although, geez, I don't know, maybe they carry 8. But I mean, I think we all assume they'll carry 7. And then the question just becomes, all right, well, do they want 13 or 14 forwards? And once you get past and we can talk about this later, but once we get past the 10 or 11 spot on forwards, to me, it all sort of becomes theoretical. It's like, well, would you like to have all these names available to you? Sure. But do you need them? Nah. Health depending, maybe not. I don't know. So that's the goaltending situation. Again, we got Kemper, Forsberg, Slukinski, George, and Portillo as that fifth wheel. And where that fifth wheel slots is the whole ball game. You mentioned it in your article. If Portillo's strapped to the back of the King's car, like an I don't remember what kind of SUV it was that used to have the tire on the back of it, then it handcuffs flexibility in the forward core likely. But if he goes down to the AHL, then it mucks up the minutes of the AHL goaltenders. And one of the things that they do have to figure out sooner the better, in my mind, is Slukinski or George. And the other
Totally.
15 months to sort of play that game.
Yeah. And the other part of it is like kind of sewing together basically what multiple points that you've said is the Kings are trying to win games and make the playoffs. The Kings have a goaltender who's 36, another goaltender in their 30s. Your third guy up can't be a 20-year-old kid who's played 2 professional games. Well,
Right,
I guess it can be, but that is very nervy, right?
Yeah.
Like, not only do the Kings have to determine who is the long-term guy, and I think the runway is longer than that personally, but I understand why you put it at 15 months. Like, if that player is suddenly thrust into the NHL picture at 20 with 2 professional games, like that is a real big ask of any 20-year-old goaltender. Even the best one on the planet isn't playing in the NHL at 20. So you got to have that third option who can come up for short stints. And like it's really hard for that to be one of your top prospects who is a 20-year-old goalie in the AHL.
Yeah, and just to be perfectly clear about it, Slukinski and Carter are technically on the same timeline contractually. They're both under contract till the end of the 2028-29 season.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in theory, yes, the runway is longer than those 15 months. I just mean, like, my jaw won't be on the floor. My brain won't be cooked by a, 50-50 split in the AHL between Slukinski and George or something close to that.
I would think so.
But I just think eventually one of them has to pull away.
Eventually 100% one of them does. It's just a matter of when, right? Like, you've seen situations like this where the goaltender who pulls away in the NHL,
right. Yep.
Look at like, I don't know, is Quick Bernier like that, or, Anaheim for sure, where, Anderson and Gibson both came up together and they both excelled, and the Ducks had to trade one.
Quick was wild because like he came up for, I want to say 3 games one year. And it was like, oh, okay. Like I think he was
this
in
guy's
the
all right.
Yeah. It was like, I knew who he was, but he's like a 3rd round pick. Bernier was a 1st round pick the year later. So it was like, oh, Bernier's the guy. Then Quick comes up for 3 games. And I think the next season he came up for 48-ish. And it was just perfectly clear after that it was like,
he was the guy.
He's the guy. And I think the next season he played 72. So it was just like, all right,
sure.
Well,
this is our guy.
Yeah, and so it was like pulling away just sort of like happened. There wasn't ever a period of time that I remember where they were splitting starts or whatever. So that's the goaltending. I suppose we'll move on to the defense now. You tell me. I'm going to share my opinion on the Brandt Clarke and the Drew Doughty of it all.
Sure.
And you tell me where you want to push back. For the last however many years it's been, we have heard from the organization that Drew Doughty and Anze Kopitar were going to have their minutes scaled back. And while that was technically correct, which is the best kind of correct, at one point, those two were playing 3 or 4 minutes more than they did last season. But from a role perspective, their roles never really changed.
Yeah.
So even if Drew Doughty plays 22 minutes this year instead of 23, down from 25 or whatever it was, my perspective is if Drew Doughty still plays more minutes than Brandt Clarke, even if Drew Doughty's minutes again go down, unless Brandt Clarke routinely plays more minutes than Drew Doughty, I am not interested in the conversation of Brandt Clarke being the number 1 D or taking over Drew. Like if 30 seconds left in the game, the Kings up 1-0, Mikey Anderson and Drew Doughty are out on the ice, then that's your number 1 pair.
I agree with a lot of what you said. But here's where I'd push back is, so to close the Kopitar loop, like Kopitar was still listed atop the depth chart last year, but played a full minute less per game than Quinton Byfield.
Sure.
So half right? Like he still, the top line on paper was Panarin, Kopitar, Kempe, but Kopitar played about 19 minutes. Byfield played about 20. I would say that succession was a little different. The Clarke Doughty one hasn't even been approached. You can talk about narratives all you want. Clarke played substantially fewer minutes than Doughty last year.
Right.
Not even close. Clarke didn't even crack 20. I looked at it yesterday. He was 19.50 per game last year. If the Kings were trailing, I would say Clark was used like a number one defenseman. If the Kings were leading, he was used like a paired 5-6
with
defenseman.
Doughty frequently. So I would say used like a number 2 defenseman, but sure.
But that's fair. But late in the game, I think if one was on the ice, it was usually Clark. But fair, he was used like a top pairing defenseman, maybe not a true one. That has to be very close, or Brandt has to be higher to entertain the conversation. Otherwise, I agree with you. I don't think that there's any. It's not a conversation until that happens. I don't necessarily think that he has to be on the ice in every up by a goal situation, but he has to be in the mix, right? Like he can't be glued to the bench every single time if you want to say that he's your guy.
And there are just
last year he was.
There's all sorts of odd things. Like, so last season, if you look at I think this is correct. Edmondson and Clark played 1,003 minutes as a pair. Anderson and Doughty played 911 minutes. So you go, all right, they played more as a pair, but Doughty missed whatever it was.
Doughty missed time,
10 or 12 games.
So did Anderson, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's
and they also broke that pair up for that stretch, right? Where Anderson went with CC, Doughty went with Dumoulin. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if Clark and Edmondson are a pair and Anderson and Doughty are a pair, I need to see those pairs used differently as well.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I'm reluctant to believe that Clark is really going to supplant Doughty as the number one, because Joel Edmondson has had career years in back-to-back seasons in different categories. You know, I think last year it was points and assists and everything. And I think the year before that, it was like games played in minutes, or maybe I have that backwards. But
I think you're right.
I just don't expect Joel Edmondson to be the number 2.
Yeah.
And unless they're going to do Clark and Anderson.
Yep. Or Clark and Dumoulin, maybe.
Yeah, or some new combination of D pairs. And who knows? Maybe Phil Housley, maybe a new coaching staff will come in and we will finally get that thing. Again, I'm going to lean on the conservatism of professional sports. My opinion as an old man with too much silver in his beard is just, I will believe it when I see it. You know, when the Detroit Red Wings made the playoffs for 20 something years in a row, and everyone was like, is this the year Detroit misses the playoffs? I was just like, well, eventually it'll happen, but until it does, I'm going to wake up assuming that tomorrow will look the same as yesterday.
Yeah. And until it happens, right? Like there was a 3-minute gap in the regular season last year and a 5-minute gap in the playoffs last year between Doughty and Clark. So as we stand today, like what's more likely to happen? Well, it's Doughty atop the depth chart. I personally think that for Clark to ascend to that role, he has to play with Anderson, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like that's a pair that I would like to see. And I would still be playing Drew Doughty in the 20s. Like I wouldn't be playing him 16, 17 minutes. He would still play in the 20s. Their minutes could be somewhat close. I would see them in different roles. I think that you don't know what Brandt Clark can be until you allow him to be that player, or to try to be that player, right? Like how can you say he can or can't be a top pairing defenseman until he is utilized like a top pairing defenseman? And that means no sheltered minutes. It means factoring in the penalty kill. It means being involved in those late game situations. And yeah, when you're down, he should be ridden hard. And you don't know if he can be that until he's used like that. And I would agree with you that it's not a conversation we can have until that disparity is substantially different.
I do not expect what I'm about to say to happen at all. This is just me spitballing. I would actually literally be shocked if this happened. However, an Eric Gustafson Brandt Clark pairing
Banana Land
might be really interesting. Like I said, I have zero expectation that that'll happen. But Eric,
what else I think could be interesting would be Eric Gustafson with Doughty. Yeah, and I don't know, it makes you think a little bit.
Well, so Eric Gustafson, if
he's
Eric
the wild card, right?
If Eric Portillo is the 5th wheel of goaltending, Eric Gustafson is the 7th wheel of the defensive core. And honestly, after talking to people about Scott Perunovic, I'm now like, oh, well, maybe
he's on the car. He might be the tire on the back, but he's.
I
He's
mean, the
not left at the
Kings,
shop.
yeah, I fully expect the 6 defensemen that everybody knows, Anderson, Doughty, Edmondson, Clark, Dumoulin, Ceci, to play the bulk
Yeah.
of the minutes this season. But Eric Gustafsson has been mentioned. Like, if you or I didn't bring him up, Laviolette, Housley, I don't think Chris Height brought him up, but I mean, people
We
bring him
didn't
up.
ask. Yeah.
People bring him up if we don't say his name. Like, he is inserted into
Yeah.
the conversation in a way that makes it conspicuous at the least. So he will be I don't think I do expect him to be the 7th defenseman, but I don't expect him to get 7th defenseman treatment the way like a Jacob Muvrari did, where it was like, well, it's
Yeah.
been 40 games since he's played. We need to get the guy some ice time. Let's throw him in there and play him 2 minutes tonight. I don't think it'll be like that.
If you took what Phil Housley said about Eric Gustafsson and took Eric Gustafsson's name out of it, you'd be like, this guy's playing 82 games, right?
Right.
Like,
Yes,
raving
exactly.
about him. He likes him.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's a fit there with Housley, with Laviolette. It's not a coincidence that this is the 3rd time Laviolette will have coached Gustafsson, right? I don't think that it is. I also think that, to your point about Mo, like, I think the biggest reason for all of that is because Mo didn't offer anything different skill set wise than the guys who were playing. You know,
And
he was another
perfectly content to sit.
Because he's the best. Like, he's the best guy.
He didn't want to,
like,
but he wouldn't complain,
No.
wouldn't kick up fuss.
might make me want to buy an EV Zug jersey because we liked him so much. Like, but he was the same style, right? He was defense first. He was a below average skater. He took care of his own zone. He wasn't gonna move the puck though, and he was at a higher rate. He's not a great skater. He's not an off and that's what the Kings needed, in my opinion, last year. So like, I look at Gustafsson and Perunovic and say, okay, these guys are different. These guys do offer something different. And if what the Kings have isn't working, instead of your option being a guy who does the same thing, now you have someone who might give you something different. And I wonder if that might make the Kings more quick to pull the trigger, if you will, on shaking things up. Whereas last year they didn't. That might be me manifesting it a little too much, because I personally was disappointed that the Kings didn't add another like solid top 4 puck moving defenseman. I thought that was a need for the team. Gustafsson or Perunovic do have that skating, puck moving skill set, and I think that they could help this team in areas that they were weak in last year.
What's most fascinating to me about the Gustafsson Perunovic thing is, like, a lot of jokes have been made about how old this roster is, and like, we get like, yes, it's an old roster. But last season there was like no injuries on the blue line. I mean, Drew Doughty missed
very
of games, but like, I had 4 of them played 82 games or something, or 3 of them and 1 played 80, or I mean, it was just nobody
very
got
little
hurt.
missed time. Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually you would think that would run out, and the older a roster you have, an older roster presumably needs more, extra pieces to fill in. So having depth in Ontario or even in LA. So you've got Gustafsson, you've got Perunovic. I don't expect Hicketts to ever get a call up, but if for whatever reason they need to go 3 deep into Ontario and the 7th defenseman, you do have Hicketts. But after that, you're dealing with rookies. You're dealing with Kirsanov, Dvorak, Woolley, Celine.
I think Booth is higher on that. I think Booth is closer to Perunovic, Gustafsson than he is the other group, personally.
Yes, and probably because Hicketts is so important to Ontario, Booth.
That factors in for sure.
And Booth's career, and he has experience. So yes, you're right, Booth. But like, the rest of them are their kids.
100%. Yeah.
Maybe not age-wise, but just as far as like professional North American experience-wise. So yeah, Perunovic, Gustafsson, it'll be fascinating to see what the D looks like, because when you go from a structure and an organizational philosophy like the Kings have had for the last, I don't know, decade, to a completely different mentality with the coaching staff. I think I've told this story before. The first time I tried to take my driver's test when I was, a much younger man, I had learned how to drive on my friend's 70s make AMC Hornet, which the manual transmission, I don't know what you call it, the gearbox, the shifter, was laid out completely differently from how other cars were in the 90s. And so I learned how to drive on my friend's Hornet, but I took the test in my mom's Toyota pickup truck.
Oof, yeah.
So as I was trying to get on the freeway, like on an on-ramp, I tried to go from second into reverse because my mind went into autopilot, and I just tried to shift gears, just just trying to like ramp up to get to merge onto the freeway, and I ground the transmission and I failed instantly. And that's my biggest concern about the coaching staff switch is like the Kings have been flying down the freeway for a very long time, playing a very specific style of hockey, man-to-man coverage in the D zone. I know they got rid of the 1-3-1 a couple years ago, but that was like baked into the team identity. The D pairs, we spoke to Blake and McClellan, you and I did, and they would target players to fit into the system. And it was designed to reduce chances and to help the goalies and everything. And now it's totally different. So the fact that they have optionality in that core is comforting, I would say.
I agree. I think it's not necessary. It's not a training camp storyline because that's too soon.
Yeah.
But an early season storyline, number one, in my opinion, is how does this group of defensemen adjust to this coaching staff style? Because the Kings ranked 32nd in goals in the blue line last year, and they ranked 30th in points. Most of that was Brant Clark.
Right, yes.
NHL Edge data, take it for what you will, but one of the six blue liners was above the 50th percentile in both maximum speed and speed bursts of 20 plus. So, and that was Cody Ceci, who is a better skater than he gets credit for, but he was the best straight line skater. He might be the best straight line skater on the blue line because the Kings don't have a flying up and down the ice, win races blue line.
Right.
They do what they do well, but that's what they are or have been. So if the fit works, great. You hear words like 4-man attack. You hear where they want the D to pinch, how aggressively they want to do so to keep plays alive. If it all works, like this group deserves the chance to see if it works. But if it doesn't, that's when it gets interesting, in my opinion. That is a major, major storyline to watch, I think.
The other half of the story is what kind of leash does the coaching staff give the veterans? Because I can't remember if it was Housley or Laviolette, but we spoke to one of the coaches, and it felt pretty clear to me that their attitude was the guys we have are going to play the way we want them to play. And if they don't,
correct,
we'll figure something out. Now, I don't know if that means minutes reductions. I don't know if that means swapping in an Eric Gustafsson, like who knows, but it feels like the coaching staff is not, the impression I have gotten early is that the coaching staff will not stand on ceremonies. There won't be any sort of like, that guy's earned the spot, so therefore we can't take it away from him. I don't feel like that's.
I got the same vibes as you. Maybe for day one of camp, but I don't get the sense that they're gonna ride the same ship into the
if
ground,
we're in the
right?
middle of November,
the same ship.
Yeah, if it's the middle of November and there's a pair that is not playing the way they want them to, I don't think we'll see that pair last for.
Yeah, I agree.
More than a period. So that brings us to the forwards, and there's all sorts of stuff to talk about with the forwards. I'm going to start with something that I have stumbled onto over the last 4 or 5 days. I have been reading a lot and seeing a lot and hearing a lot of talk because a lot of grades have been coming out, grading the Kings off season, and, the Athletic had their confidence surveys come out. And so there's been a lot of talk about organizations and how their off seasons went. And I keep hearing stuff about the Kings not replacing Anze Kopitar. And I have 2 thoughts about that, and I'm curious to see how you react to them. The first is you can't replace Anze Kopitar. So honestly, I'm feeling this. I reserve the right to change this opinion. I'm kind of because realistically, there is no replacement for Anze Kopitar. And I can remember the post-Gretzky days where the Kings trotted out just a ton of guys with careers, with, impressive, like Ray Ferraro, Ed Olczyk, Paul Isabert, Eric Rasmussen. I mean, even into the late 2010s, getting Michael Hanzus, like there were tons of guys, but it took 10 years. Wow, it feels longer than that. It took 10 years to go from Gretzky to Kopitar. And so I'm kind of glad that I wasn't being sold, oh, here's Scott Thomas. He's a replacement for Anze Kopitar. Because no disrespect to Scott Thomas, who's a fine.
I assume you're talking about Robert Thomas.
Sorry, Robert Thomas. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. I don't know why I can't remember his first name. But I mean, no disrespect to Robert Thomas, who's a fine NHLer, and I would not be upset if the Kings got him. But he would not replace Anze Kopitar. Like, in order to replace Anze Kopitar, you'd have to get somebody with the ability to be the best player in franchise history. And that's too tall a task to try and sell me on, like, here's 80 cents on the dollar. This is our replacement. I'm not buying it. The second thought is Artemi Panarin is the replacement for Anze Kopitar.
That's your thought, or that's what you're seeing from others?
That's my thought. Is that, like, at least short term, you can't replace Anze Kopitar, but you need a focal point. Like, you need a functional replacement. And so Artemi Panarin, point per game player, unbelievable player. I've said it time and time again. I believe it. The Kings have never had a player like Artemi Panarin. He's the only guy who showed up on the NHL network's rankings of top players at their positions. He will, and I imagine should be the focal point of opposing teams when they come in.
Yeah, I think definitely. I do agree 100% with your second point.
Yeah.
I think that's spot on. The first point, I think I know exactly what you're saying, and you're correct in it. I just don't think that the Kings don't need to replace 20 years of Anze Kopitar. They only need to replace one.
No, they could have gotten a center. Like, sure.
They and frankly, they acquired a center who had the exact same number of points as Kopitar did last season.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that Eric Halla is a 1C who is Anze Kopitar, but they had the same point like last year. And I don't believe that the Kings even really had a chance to acquire what you would consider to be a 1C. I just don't think that player was available, or if he was, it didn't make sense. Like, if you say, okay, yeah, you can get a first line center, but you're giving up Quinton Byfield and 2 first-round picks to do so. Well, how much did you really get better? Or if it required Brandt Clark or both, like, that doesn't help. This team can't give up those players unless you're getting like Connor McDavid, and like that player wasn't available, I don't think, this summer.
Right.
I don't think that the real player that you're talking about is probably not going to be available ever via a trade or free agency. Like, you don't usually acquire franchise pillar type players in those ways.
Without sacrificing something
a lot
of incredible value.
So like, I think that in terms of replacing 2025-26 Anze Kopitar, that was achievable. In terms of replacing Anze Kopitar, the legend, no, I don't think that you can do that.
Yeah. I guess I just meant more of like, I'm glad we didn't have what we had in the late 90s, which was just a trail of guys where it was like, oh, come on. Like,
yeah,
this is not an exact thing because this guy didn't play a ton of minutes. But like, at one point, the Kings signed Randy Robitaille when Luc Robitaille was not on the Kings. And it was like, it just felt insulting, even though
give him the 20.
I'm sure the reason they signed Randy Robitaille was not to try and trick people into believing that there was a Robitaille on the roster, but it felt very much like, oh, come on, Randy Robitaille. Like,
yeah.
So I'm glad it wasn't like, okay, and now, welcome to the team, Dave Kopitar, spelled with a C.
It wasn't like they went out and got a Temu version of Anze Kopitar,
exactly.
to bring it in. I think there was a pretty clearly defined approach to the players that the Kings brought in, and it seemed in a way like an acknowledgement that the true replacement for Anze Kopitar was not available, or not worth the cost of acquiring this summer.
And so then that's the off season. The next big question that I have seen raised is, and again, this is, who knows, And that is, how does the center depth get distributed
Yeah.
along the lines? And, you know, I have my thoughts, and I think I disagree with a lot of people about it, so I won't go into it. But I just, at the end of last season, at the season-ending media availabilities, somebody asked me what I thought about the question that was posed to Kempe about playing center.
Mm-hmm.
And in the afterglow of the availabilities, standing outside of Toyota Sports Performance Center in the parking lot and just sort of chit-chatting with other media members, my initial impression was, yeah, he doesn't want to do it. This isn't a thing. Then after hearing Ken Holland reference Peter Laviolette's conversation with him, talking to Peter Laviolette about it, seeing what happened in free agency, having a summer to mull it over, I am less sure than I was in whatever that was, April or May or whenever those conversations took place.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I thought it was a strange question at the time
It
to
was,
a player who
to me.
wasn't asked to play that position one time last
Right.
year. And I didn't even think of it as an option. But maybe that's the benefit to bringing in a Laviolette who watched you from the outside and sees a different option than what was there. I think that the Kopitar replacement question is the first layer to the forwards. And I think the where does Kempe play right wing or center is the second question that sets up every other conversation. Because if Kempe plays center, we're on one timeline. And if Kempe plays wing, we're on a completely different timeline. And they're not even remotely the same, I don't think. Because in one world, Quinton Byfield is atop your depth chart. In another, he's not. And I think it's a very different conversation. I felt fairly, if you asked me a month ago or right after we had those conversations, I felt fairly confident that Kempe would play center to start camp. And now I don't feel as confident. Maybe I feel maybe it's more of a coin flip, whether he will or won't.
Yeah.
And I wonder, you know, maybe they'll toy around with it, right? They'll try it some days. They won't try it other days. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just, well, the conversations happened a month and a half ago, so it's further away. Now I'm drifting away from it or what? Like,
right.
If you ask me today, I almost feel like he's going to play wing and not center, but I could see either for sure.
So I'm probably overthinking this. And Lord knows I'm guilty of that a ton. But if Quentin Byfield sort of reverse engineering my opinion on who plays center. If Quentin Byfield plays center between Panarin and Kempe, then your second line is Fiala, Zuccarello, and presumably Laferriere at center.
I think it would be Holla in that instance.
Okay.
One thing I do feel confident in is that I don't think that the Kings want Laferriere playing center. I think it'll be Kempe.
So
or
funny
the
after the last.
Objectively, it is.
Yeah.
I think that the current regime, it's if someone's going to move to the middle, it's going to be Kempe. Is
right.
What I think I've gathered.
I'm glad you didn't say Lawton, because I want to just say this definitively. Lawton as a 2C in my mind is a non-starter, and I won't hear of it. Like,
I think the centers,
maybe on a certain night, but like as a plan, not hearing it.
I feel pretty confident saying the top two centers will either be Kempe and Byfield or Byfield and Holla.
So let's just say it's Holla, because that
feels
more comfortable for me. If it's Holla, who is 30, will be 36 in March.
Yeah.
Then your second line is Kevin Fiala, who's coming off of a leg break.
Yep.
Matt Zuccarello, who's 39 years old and listed at 5'8".
Yep.
And Eric Haula, who's 35 and is listed at 5'11". Now, I've said this time and time again, because of my time spent in hospitals over the last few years, I know for a fact that I'm 5'9" on a good day. If I'm 5'9", there are a ton of guys in that locker room listed at 6 feet who are not 6 feet tall.
Yep.
Because I have spent a lot of time standing directly next to these guys, and some of them are shorter than me. Some of them are about as tall. Like Phil Deneau, I won't pick on anybody currently on the roster. There's no shot Phil Deneau is 6 feet tall. Like, no shot.
I remember when I worked in the ECHL, I talked to a guy who was listed at a certain height, and he was probably listed about 3 to 4 inches taller than he actually is.
Yep.
And he's just like, basically he was just like, yeah, I got rounded up by an inch by 3 different teams.
Right.
And then eventually I was rounded up by 3 to 4 inches on my height. They're like, you're 5'7". We're going to put you at 5'8". You're 5'8". We'll put you at 5'9". And then eventually he was just listed as a 5'11" defenseman. But in reality, he was 5'7", 5'8". And that's just like what happened at lower levels. And then it never got changed. No one's ever going to be like, oh, you're listed at 5'10". You're 5'7". No one's going to do that. So they're just going to keep listing them. They might not raise him again because it's absurd, but they're going to keep him where he was. And like I saw it happen, and the guy was like, yeah, they just kept adding the 1, and eventually 1 became 3 or 4.
So for that reason, I just think a line, and who knows, maybe Peter Laviolette doesn't care about this, but I just think a small, old line with a history of injury concerns is less than ideal. And so from that standpoint, I go, all right, well, what's the solution? The solution is you put Quentin Byfield, who's young, healthy, and huge, and has experience playing with Laferriere and Fiala. Adrian Kempe is huge, maybe not young, but healthy, and has experience playing center. And Zuccarello has a ton of experience playing with a Russian winger. And so, like I said, kind of reverse engineering. Maybe I'm way overthinking it. Maybe training camp opens and it is Byfield in between Panarin and Kempe. And I understand the impulse of people to say like Byfield has to be the number 1 center. But I point back to what you said earlier in our conversation, which is last season, Andrei Kopitar was top of the depth chart and Quentin Byfield played more minutes than he did.
Yep. Quentin Byfield was a 20-minute per night player last year, which is in the 1C debate by usage.
Right.
But I think oftentimes people can't read beyond the depth chart, right?
Right.
Like, what if the gap was 6 minutes? What if Kopitar was listed 1 and played 6 minutes fewer than like? I still think people would say, well, Quentin's not your 1C.
Yeah, and special teams is going to have a ton to do with this, and I fully expect. Well, actually, I don't know who I expect to be on the top power play.
It's more interesting than past years.
Yeah, I guess it won't be I mean, Panarin and Clark, I think are locks.
I think Kempe is as well.
Yeah, you would think so. And then what, Zuccarello and Byfield? But
then you've got Kevin Fiala, who led the team in power play points last year. You've got Corey Perry, who could stick his butt in front of the net,
net front,
as well as most of them, and I feel like there were times when you were struggling to fit you. It was the conversation of like, well, who's the 5th guy because no one stands out. This year kind of feels like, oh, the second unit might have a couple guys who could have a real shout at the top unit.
And I haven't gone and looked into it. I'm not even sure how one would, but I don't know how Peter Laviolette or Phil Housley use special teams. Like there's some teams where, guys go out, like Ovechkin like doesn't leave the ice for 2 minutes of a power play. We don't know if this coaching staff will roll out power play 1. They control play in the offensive zone for 45 seconds. There's a stoppage. And then do they send unit 1 right out back again to try and capitalize on the momentum? Or do they throw unit 2 out to try and get fresh? Like we just don't know yet.
We don't know. Yeah.
And what are the penalty killing pairs going to be? Because last year, I think you agreed with me last year. I just assumed Armia would be like PK1 and he was not.
Yeah.
Now that they have Haula and Armia who combined together for Team Finland and turns out like went to the same high school and like have known each other and blah, 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 blah. I just, my automatic assumption is like, all right, well, your number 1 penalty killing unit will be Haula, Armia, Doughty, and Anderson, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I still expect Byfield to play a ton on the PK.
Yeah. I mean, his talents, I feel like, are best served in most roles, right? Like he plays in all situations. Yeah. And the other element to all this, like I definitely hear what you're saying about line 2. I'm more comfortable with an older, smaller line 2 because of the area the Kings are the deepest in is on the wings. And I think Laferriere and Moore as your 5-6 wingers is really good. If you're like in the playoffs last year, that was wing 3, wing 4. And the bottom 6, frankly, didn't contribute anything in the postseason. Your wing 3, 4 was Moore and Laferriere. Now, if they're wings 5, 6, at least you have like, you're not one injury away from pulling up a fourth line player to play in your top 6. You have a guy who has a shout at being a legitimate second line player.
So I kind of referenced this when we were talking about goalies. I'm going to go down the list of forwards and you tell me when to stop. I'll give a few seconds after I read each name. You tell me where to stop when you think that we have reached the point where so I'll read the names, and when I get to a name that you think is not guaranteed 50 games of season playing time, you tell me when to stop. So Artemi Panarin,
Stop.
Adrian Kempe, Matt
We're
Zuccarello.
talking like health driven, correct? Like,
yeah,
in a perfect world, everyone like, it's not like, I think this guy might get injured. It's
no, I just mean like
okay.
assuming a full 84 games of eligibility. I'm just going to read names, and when I read somebody that you think isn't guaranteed to play 50 games, so Artemi Panarin, Adrian Kempe, Matt Zuccarello, Kevin Fiala, Quentin Byfield, Alex Laferriere, Eric Howla, Yoel Armia, Trevor Moore, Scott Lawton, Corey Perry.
Stop.
Oh, okay. And is that
that's where I would?
Okay.
Potentially. I think so.
So that's 10, right?
That's what I would have said.
That's the 11th name. Yeah.
I would have 10 players on my list with your parameters.
So that means that after Scott Lawton, we're looking at Corey Perry, Sammy Hellenius, Taylor Ward, Alex Turcotte, and Jared Wright. And I leave Jared Wright last just because he was the last one called up last season.
And I'd put Andre Lee.
Okay.
Probably on the back end of that list. Yeah. But yeah, I would, in my opinion, there is a clear delineation there.
Mm-hmm. And the only reason it matters, like I said, it matters because there's too many names to begin with. That's if we include Andre Lee, it's 16 forwards. If we don't include Andre Lee, it's 15 forwards. Max, realistically, we're looking at 14. If the Kings want to carry a third goalie, we're down to 13.
Looking at 13.
So who, you mentioned the timelines, if Kempe is a center or not. If he is, you've got Kempe, Byfield, Howla, Lawton, Hellenius, Turcotte. If he isn't, you've got Byfield, Howla, Lawton, Hellenius, Turcotte. I don't know. If Corey Perry's out, does Taylor Ward take his? But if given the fact that Corey Perry is 41 and may not be an every night player just for that reason, what kind of spare part are you keeping to play the non-Corey Perry availability minutes? Do you keep a net front guy? Do you keep a fast, do you take sort of like the opposite type of guy? Alex Turcotte is in the final year of his contract. I've seen a lot of people suggest he might be a candidate to play, second line center, which I don't personally believe, but it's not outside of the bounds of possibilities. I don't know. It's like the worst year for there to only be 4 games of preseason.
I 100% agree. And I'll take it every time because the preseason, man, is a drag. But if you were looking at a year to have more games with more time to learn systems and learn each other and try stuff out, this would be the year. Last year, they could have played one game. You knew what the roster was going to be.
Right.
The Perry injury was the only thing even opening
which happened before camp even started.
Yeah. So you knew going in there was a spot open. But I think they're those bottom of the roster spots are going to be interesting. I think it is a legitimate competition come camp, right? Like different skill sets for sure. Like Andre Lee has more size, Taylor Ward's tenacity, Turcotte's versatility to play different places in the lineup, Wright's speed, Hellenius' stature. All these guys, I think, have something to prove into camp, and they all offer something a little bit different. The one thing I like is like a Lawton could play on the wing, a Turcotte could play on the wing. At least you have that. But you're probably talking about 4 or 5 guys for 2 to 3 spots, and that creates competition and means that someone will be assigned to the AHL or waived who probably is coming into camp saying, I have a good chance to make the team.
And there are these external forces that we just don't know how they'll impact yet, which is Ken Holland, who is still like Ken Holland's a funny one because he's only been here for a year.
Yeah.
But people talk about it like it's been too, like, I feel like the conversation about Ken Holland includes, his entire career. But as the Kings GM, he's only been here for a year. And Peter Laviolette and Ray Whitney and Phil Housley and Chris Hite are brand new. Like Mike Buckley's been around, but Mike Buckley's not deciding who's on the fourth line. So, in the end of the 2024-25 season, do I have my years right? Rob Blake came out after the trade deadline and said, Sammy Hellenius is our fourth line center. This is what the roster is going to look like. It did. That was what it was. Then Rob Blake steps down. Ken Holland gets hired, and Ken Holland starts introducing the concept of Alex Turcotte as a fourth line center.
Mm-hmm.
My assumption is that is why Alex Turcotte started the season as the fourth line center, because the previous GM had laid out pretty strong desire to see Hellenius in that spot. And then the new GM came in and said, nope, it's Turcotte. And then it was Turcotte. And then Deneau gets traded. Turcotte moves up the lineup. Things shifted. And ultimately it wound up being Hellenius again.
Yeah.
Right? All roads sort of seem to lead back to Hellenius being the fourth line.
All roads lead to Hellenius.
But we have no idea. I mean, I think you and I agree when we talked to Peter Laviolette and he laid out how he views roster construction. It felt really traditional to me, right? Like a scoring 1, a scoring 2, a defensive 3, and then, I don't know, energy 4, checking 4, whatever you want to call it.
Some combination of that. Yeah.
Yeah. But, the Dogs, as they became known, was a Jim Hiller, DJ Smith artifact. Yep. So, like, who knows if that carries any momentum into this new coaching staff. I don't know.
And the Dogs, like, Jeff Malott's not here.
Right. Yes, of course. Yeah.
And he was, I would say, the number one name on the chart for the Dogs was Jeff Malott. And that changes the game a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
And I hadn't even thought about this until you mentioned Jeff Malott's name, but no, I don't think that fighting is a necessary part of the game anymore. And it's certainly not as big a part of the game anymore.
Yeah.
But when you had Jeff Malott on the roster, it answered the question of, if needed, who was
going to step up?
Yeah. And now, all due respect to 41-year-old Corey Perry, it can't be Corey Perry.
Right.
That can't be your solution.
I mean, if he's in the lineup, it kind of has to fall to a Hellenius.
Yeah.
You look around, I don't see who else it could be. If it's an Andre Lee, I know he's got the willingness to do that and the size, but none of these guys are that. Like Malott, I think, had a lot more of that in his game, on top of, I think, some underrated ability as well. So
he was big enough out. And he had committed to doing it.
And his skating was better than he got credit for. Like he had a lot of things that going for him, and that role is open. Like it's not, and maybe the Kings don't have that kind of player, and does it hurt them or not? I don't know. Like it seems like it's Hellenius or bust if the Kings want that element in the lineup.
I was so happy with our conversations with Laviolette and Housley, but if I had one regret now looking back on it, I wish we had asked, how important do you think it is that there be an enforcer? Because listen, plenty of teams just don't. And I think you can easily get away with it, but I know that there are a lot of fans who miss it and want it, and a lot of teams. I mean, it seemed very important to, at least within the last year or two of Rob Blake's tenure, it seemed like a priority for the Kings to have somebody, at least one person on the roster available to fill that role. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this sort of preview, unless I left anything off.
I think that's pretty comprehensive.
All right. So that's a first official look at the roster. There's tons of questions. Training camp starts in 2.5 weeks now?
Yeah.
From the time we're recording this. So the questions will start getting answered. And because there's only 4 preseason games, my hunch is they'll start getting answered really quickly.
I think it's 3 weeks from release date of this episode will be day 1 of camp. And that's,
there you go.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And there's rookie camp in between then and now, which, I mean, it's hockey. It's guys skating in games with Kings jerseys on, even if none of them.
Something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be exciting. Zach Dooley, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thanks for watching, Kings fans. We'll talk to you soon.